before I had a clue who the incredulous, greatest musical inventor of the 20th century, Les Paul. I knew that one Zakk Wylde was playing a Les Paul like this with EMGs, and there was nothing cooler to me. I didn't know the man, the crazy inventor, the guy that pioneered multi-track recording. I just knew that Slash was freaking killing it with the Les Paul. I remember I had a Strat copy for my first guitar. And you know when you get something new, I was like maybe 9 or 10. I was like, this is the best guitar there is. I thought it was. I really thought it was. And I remember going to school and I got schooled because my buddy Mark Ordung, you know what he had? He had a Les Paul. And he looked at me and he goes, dude, this is a Les Paul. This is the coolest guitar you'll ever see. I think I was maybe 12 or 13. Mark, you were right. You were right, Mark. My silly Strat copy, PV, was not as cool as your Les Paul. So when I got an opportunity to get this Les Paul, and if you haven't seen the video where I talk about basically how I got taken to court when I was like 14 or 15 because basically this guitar was gifted to me by a crazy person, go back and watch it. But this is my first Les Paul. It's a 2000 Les Paul Classic. It's supposed to be the 1960 Les Paul Classic, so it has these yellowed, kind of aged trapezoid inlays. And of course, I ripped the pickups right out. I didn't. I had my bass player, Darren, at the time do it, because I don't know how to do that. And he put in these EMG 81 and 85s. And there's a whole thing about 81 85s in a Les Paul. And it's true. It's true. If you want to sound freaking awesome, play a Les Paul with 81 85s through a Marshall. If it doesn't sound awesome, it's you. This is a guitar that has lived with me and gone through so many changes. Even had the headstock cracked by one of my buddies who got really fucked up and decided it'd be cool to crack my guitar head. But this is the one. I got offered a 72 Les Paul Custom for this guitar and said no. When I want to record something heavy, this is the Les Paul that kills it all. Les Paul that kills them all. The first guy that I really just fell in love with as a guitar player was Randy Rhoads. He played a 1974 Les Paul Custom. It was the best guitar that he played. I mean, honestly, I'm not a fan of his silly Sandoval V with only 21 frets that are bow ties and polka dots. But for me, the Randy Tone is his 74 Les Paul Custom. And this isn't the same one as him, because this is the 20th anniversary. This was actually the first anniversary model that Gibson ever had, and it's in mystically rare wine red, because if you look back at the 74 Gibson catalog, you couldn't order this guitar in wine red. There is Gibson folklore that when they couldn't sell enough of something, that they'd blow them out cheaper as seconds, because there's not one damn thing wrong with this, even 50 freaking years later, 48 years later. It's kind of like when you go on Reverb and you have all these people competing to sell brand new stuff, so then they list it as mint, and it's really just new, but so they can sell it lower. Gibson did that to themselves by putting a 2 on the back of it. Tell me where I'm wrong. One night, I couldn't sleep, and I went online and decided I would find out all the differences between the 2018 and the 2019 Gibson lineup. And they came out with this guitar called the Gibson High Performance, as you can see, etched into this piece of metal. And these are very controversial guitars because, first off, it's got a wider fretboard, which at first I hated, but now I kind of like, but I hated it first. It's got rich light. There's a lot of weird stuff to it. And as you can see, it's one of the first Gibsons that came standard with this strange neck carve that has like no neck joint. It's just nice and flush. And you would think they would make it easier to play, but because it's slightly wider, I feel like it negates it being easier unless you have like bucket foot, bucket Buckethead's hands, where Gibson tried making this faster. I feel like they made it harder because it's like most people don't have hands that big. But I like it, but it's confusing because like it has rich light, but then it has real mother of pearl. So it's like fake wood, real mollusk. Locking tuners. But what sold me on this guitar, what sold me in the middle of the night when I couldn't sleep, was this color. It's Seafoam Fade. Oh my God, are you serious? Like my two favorite colors for a Les Paul are Seafoam and Caribbean Blue. It's like Seafoam over here. And it fades into Caribbean Blue, and they call it Seafoam Fade, which means that they were thinking the same thing that I was. There's like a romance to that. And when I got this and I pulled it out of the case, I was just like, oh. It's one of the few Les Pauls I ever bought brand new. And they came in like this crazy aluminum brushed case that like scratches up like crazy, but like weighs more than the guitar, but it's like wildly high quality with like a wood handle. Very weird time in Gibson. But you know what? The other thing that's fucking wild about it is that if there wasn't enough options with 4 push-pulls, but if that's not enough, just wait. You too, if you possess a screwdriver, can go in here and fuck with dip switches and do other things. And one little cute thing, they didn't want to put a pick guard on it, which I love. No poker chip. And this doesn't turn off. This is just straight up metal. And it's all like etched and shit. Gibson. This should be a thing all the time. Why do I have to buy this silly HP model to get this? It's fucking rad. I have found in my life things come in twos. I bought this on a Monday and I bought this on a Wednesday. Seriously. These are the Les Paul Les Plus. The Les Paul Les Plus was, again, a strange island of Dr. Moreau kind of guitar. Because first off, look at these. What? This one came with Imperial tuners, and this one someone sent back to the factory and said, put on some Klusons like real people play. But this model also used to have a toggle switch that would tap the 57 and the 57 Plus pickup that is still standard in this. And the guy before me said, I'm gonna make this like a normal Les Paul. I'm gonna get rid of those silly freaking tuners, and I'm going to put normal wiring. And then I put on these knobs because the other ones looked like snot. They were just disgusting. But this also has real mollusk. So this is from a time where they had like the hologram of Les on the back, like kind of staring at you like, hey man, are you practicing? But it's like weird. And then they had it's 2015, by the way, guys. And what they did was they compensated by putting mother of pearl in. But this one has the 57 and the 57 Plus, and this one has 2 TV Jones kind of pickups in it. So pretty cool. Totally wild guitars, but the thing that's great about these guitars, and you can go back and watch, I demo them both out, they don't sound any different as far as like it's not lacking any wood sound. So like, I mean, I guess they could probably just do this to all the Les Pauls and save us, you know, arthritis and physical therapy bills. But whatever, it's the Les Plus. Les Paul Les Plus. Just stare at the hologram. And it says LP100, so this is another thing. Totally ridiculous. Like, he turned 100 that year and they put it on the headstock, but it's just gross looking. Like, I'd rather it just be signed by Les. Without question, this is the most popular Les Paul on my entire channel. It's the Buckethead Les Paul, and it was an example, and still remains one of the greatest examples of a guitar that like originally went for $850, and 5 years later, add a zero to that. These guitars go between like $8,000 and $12,000. This is actually the standard version versus the studio version. I don't know that there's that much difference as far as price, because he actually tends to play the studio more, which had, I believe, Rosewood versus this is, I want to say, Richlight. But it has the Atari kill switches. It's a baritone, so this thing's freaking huge. It has a 27 inch scale. So like, it's huge. And I really love this guitar because these Alnico pickups, these DiMarzio Alnico pickups, they sound great. They're like chimey and musical, and although they do have a high output kind of scream to them, they're not like Fishman Fluence or EMGs or like these super 15, 16 output. Like they're nice, almost like a vintage high scream. So they sound wonderful. What made the value on these things is because Gibson has never done a baritone Les Paul. Gibson has never done a 24 fret Les Paul. It just never happened. So nevertheless with kill switches. So I have to surmise between that and the fact that Buckethead is a mystical being that, and that no one really cared about these when they came out. Has made this guitar hyper valuable and really cool. And this one is yellow as fuck because as I've determined in the video I have that you've probably seen if you're watching this one, somebody smoked a lot. I mean, even look right here. It's like white and then it's like, oh, somebody spilled, skull juice all over this. And then it's like over here, like fine. Then it's like my dog peed in the snow. And then it fades into like straight up, like this is where the squirrel peed on top of the dog pee. And then over here, it's like, fish scale cocaine, back to stamped on cocaine with baby powder. It's got a lot of different shades of white, but it's really fucked up. This thing always makes me happy because first off, the 1960 Les Paul Classic is such a great guitar. And anyone that knows about Les Paul Classics, this one's a 95. The really early ones are where it's at. Because the thing is to bear in mind, when the Classic first came out, it was a higher end guitar than the Standard. But I guess the public didn't perceive it as that. So over time, Gibson has changed things about the Classic. I think the earlier than 95 ones actually said Les Paul model instead of Classic on it. This one doesn't need to say Les Paul model on it because it has Les Paul's actual freaking handwriting on it. Not even joking. This is Les Paul's G160, because if you've watched the documentary that we're doing on Les Paul, he numbered his guitars between G1 and 300. This is G160, his 1995 Gold Top, which is a very interesting guitar. It modded by Les himself because Les never kept anything normal, because why would he? He was constantly tinkering. And one of the reasons why, what I've learned about Les is that as great of a musician as he was way more of a trailblazer for technology and for, changing things for the better and figuring it all out. Like he literally was a Thomas Edison of beyond guitar, just sound. This Les Paul has a very, very, very early piezo bridge where each one of these has its own crystal and its own wire, and it goes to this preamp that he has lovingly, with masking tape on his own Les Paul model, wrote bass, mid, and treble, piezo volume, mag volume, and mag tone. And then if you look in the back, he even has little notes to himself. First off, isn't this adorable? Because I've seen some of his older guitars. He actually tried to make this look like it's nice and symmetrical, whereas in the past, I felt like he would just hack away at things. So this is later Les, because early Les, this would just be a giant hole. But he has little notes to himself. Mag pickups, hardwired direct to selector switch. Battery located under PCB. Output jack activates battery. So when you're done using it, unplug it. Thanks, Les. Why don't you smash that subscribe button already?